Hey everyone, I'd like to welcome you to the show and just remind everyone that we have shirts in the shop. Go to pgttcm.com. You can pick up shirts, stickers. We even have those shower curtains I was talking about last time. Also, you can join us on Patreon and get a free sticker. Check out the show notes and learn how you can be a part of People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, help support the show any way you can. Patreon users, you get a free sticker, at least. So check out what we've got. Show notes, that's where you're going to find our PayPal link and our sponsors and any information about any guests that are on the show and where to find them. Thank you.
You're listening to KZOM, Oleander Public Radio. Radio.
Greetings, listeners. It is I, TV Spitzer Informer Dave, here once again to talk to you about the Cthulhu mythos, its books, its monsters, its unfortunate human casualties, its timeline in general, and even its tangential bits, like the dreamlands or things of a weird nature that are Lovecraftian leaning. Once more we head into those dark woods, further feeling those malevolent forces upon us. Once again we walk down the lightless stone staircase in the middle of nowhere.
You're listening to KZOM.
Hey everyone, it's me, DB Spitzer, and to my virtual right, as always, Farmer Dave. How well are you doing today?
I am doing virtually well today.
Nice. I'm well done. And welcome.
The sun's coming out.
What's that?
After all that snow, the sun's coming out.
Yeah, no, it's like a Beatles song or something. And it's actually getting warm. It's not like spring warm. It's like nice winter warm when you're like, oh, hey, let's open up the windows, everyone, or let's open up the curtains, everyone, and crack the windows a little bit and get that winter stink out of the house. But yeah.
So our listeners in California and Florida, when he says it's warm, he means 40 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah. It got up to 51, and I was like, wow, this is nice. And, it doesn't really dip below 30 this time of year, but getting up to 51 is like, oh, cool.
It got below 20 at night in the farm.
Oh,
we had to break out some goat coats for the farm.
Yeah.
For the goats.
Oh man, I remember having to put coats on horses when I was a kid and hating it because the horses hated those things. That and fly nets on their face. But yeah. Anyway, do you have to put like fly nets or anything like that on goats' faces when it's summertime?
No.
Goats are pretty good at keeping flies off their face.
No, it's not a problem like horses. Okay.
All right. They move around too much, I'm sure.
Now you give me something to worry about. That could be that they move around. Yeah. I don't know, but yeah, it's not really an issue. Flies in the house haven't really been an issue since we had the house exercised.
Yeah. Okay. But, cool. Yeah. Yeah, no, and things are pretty normal out in the cemetery. Everything's melted, as I said last week. We had a little bit of a silver thaw, though, because everything melted, then it rained, then it froze, then downtown and Eldritch Town were just a sheet of ice. Everyone was ice skating. Let's see, last time I said I went to the medical center and got my booster and my flu shot, and also my new Glary guitar. And unfortunately, because I got
the medical center?
At the medical center, the West Medical Center. And it's named after Dr. West. It's in the north part of town, but it's called the West Medical Center. So I got both shots, and I have been so weak from my shots. And everyone's like, oh, those affect men over 35 differently. And, oh, yeah, if you had a hard time with any of your shots before, oh, yeah, if you've ever had a problem with your flu shots, it's like, oh, man. So I have just been laying on the couch watching Korean edits of The Simpsons, where I don't know if I talked about this last week, but
I don't think you did.
Okay, it's really crazy. Korean edits of The Simpsons, where it's like any of the jokes that wouldn't like really kind of translate like automatically are taken out, and it seems like more like a normal family sitcom, and a lot of jokes are like taken out, and it ends up being like 9 minutes long, and it's like newer episodes. And I've even seen some episodes where it's older episodes that have been chopped together, multiple episodes, and it turns like one episode or like 3 episodes into like a totally different new episode. It's really bizarre, and I don't have links for that or anything like that right now because I've been watching it while I was sick, and it's just like whatever YouTube is showing me. So
makes me wonder what did they take out of the Squid Games that they didn't want to show us?
I don't know. I currently don't have Netflix, so I couldn't tell you what a Squid Game is. I know that it exists, and I've been avoiding any references to it because the fact that I want to watch it, and I don't want to like.
So you know what a real world Squid Game is?
What's a real world Squid Game?
It's kind of the Korean version of hopscotch.
Okay.
And it goes like in different angles, in different directions, so that it goes out like squid tentacles. So yeah, I haven't seen the movie yet, but I know what a real Squid Game is.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are the TV series, but I guess they go out like from a center place so that not everybody's hopping in the same place. But that's what a Squid Game is in real life. It's a Korean version of hopscotch.
Oh, that's cool. That's pretty cool to know.
If it's not going to get me a job or not going to be on a test, I know it.
Yeah, no, I remember a period of time, Dave, before Wikipedia, before smartphones, when people like you and I were Wikipedia, people would be like, hey, Dave, who was that blonde lady that was in that Tom Hanks movie with the mermaid? And you would go, oh, Daryl Hannah. And, and
we were gods among men. And then the internet brought us down a peg.
Yeah, no, I mean... Wikipedia. No one asks me questions about Teen Wolf anymore. Anyway. So this week we're not talking about graveyards. We're not talking about snow and ice. We're not even talking about teen lycanthropes. We are talking about Dagon and Hydra and the Deepones.
Since we're talking about what's real and what's not, before we talk about Lovecraftian Dagon, let's talk about the real Dagon.
Okay,
because Lovecraft didn't invent the name.
Who's this real Dagon you're talking about?
So Dagon is a Mesopotamian or Syrian deity. It gets a little bit confusing.
Yeah.
And Lovecraft gets confused, but it's not really his fault this time.
Okay.
So Dagon is seen often as the Philistine ocean god. In reality, he was a fertility he was sort of like the god of the dew and the mist. He was the god of, the water that would enough water in the desert to let them grow crops.
Gotcha.
But he gets really confused with another god named Onus. And Onus is basically the Philistine, and I'm experts are going to call in, and I'm using Mesopotamian, Philistine, and all these themes sort of simultaneously.
Sure,
they're not. But he was the god of the ocean and the storms. And it really was, the two were confused. And it wasn't until after Lovecraft had written Dagon that it realized that academics realized that when they had been talking about Dagon, they'd been talking about Onus the whole time.
Huh. Okay.
And so Lovecraft uses the word Dagon because he thinks it's an ocean deity. But everybody in 1918, 1917, 1920 thought that this was who they were talking about.
Okay.
Now, Lovecraft is, of course, an atheist, but he's at least familiar with the Bible.
Sure.
And Dagon pops up a couple times in the Bible. Most importantly, it's the temple where Samson gets his hair cut off.
Okay.
And he's tried and he tears down. That's the temple of Dagon.
Ah, okay. All right.
And you remember The Shape of Water?
Yeah.
The movie? So, again, spoilers for what, a 4-year-old movie or so. But the agent is always talking about the story of Samson, comparing himself to Samson. Well, so that's where the metaphor comes from, because the sea creature, that's sort of Dagon, and he's the Samson character, but it's told from the fish person's perspective.
Okay, gotcha. All right. That's cool. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I like that.
And so one of the few, and then we can maybe talk. People say want to go back to what they're listening to, but one of the few times in Stargate 1 where there were really sort of human aliens. There was one episode where there was an aquatic alien, and they actually call it Onus, and they use Onus correctly in that term, but they were making that in the 21st century.
Sure.
So not based on bad anthropology of the 19th and earliest 20th century.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's interesting. That's where Dagon comes from. Now, where does Hydra come from? Hydra is just a mythological monster that,
So in the 1940s, a secret Nazi organization dropped the castle. Okay, no. So yeah, I'm pretty sure Hydra just comes in. And Lovecraft, of course, was he knew Greek mythology.
Sure, yeah.
I think he just pulled the name out of Hydra the Beast.
Yeah. No, it seems like, I don't know, just like Hydra for this. It gets confusing when you try and search Hydra.
Hail Hydra. You want to know a couple other cool Dagon facts?
Oh, sure, yeah.
So they've discovered the bones of a type of whale that is extinct. That its Latin name has Dagon in it.
Oh, okay. All right.
And there's also a Dagon butterfly.
Oh, I did not know that. Yeah. Okay, so that's a little bit of backstory there. I was going to say...
There's also a little town in California named Dagon.
Really?
Yeah, up in, I think it's Alameda County, somewhere up there.
Okay, all right. Okay, I don't know that part of California, so I couldn't even point it out on a map. But hey, anyone who's listening, feel free to go to MapQuest or Google Maps or any of those digital map sites, or if you have paper maps. Whoa. No? I mean, I'm recording in downtown, so I'm I just heard a police car go through. So anyway, I have to edit that out. Dagon and Hydra. So, where do Dagon and Hydra begin? I believe we first get Dagon in 1921.
So I was thinking a little bit earlier. I'll have to check when Dagon was written.
Sure.
But yeah, so he first appears, curiously enough, in the short story named after him.
Yes. Yeah. No. In the story, a person who is captured by, I believe, Germans and then escapes and then his little dinghy ends up on squishy, gross land, and I don't want to ruin Dagon for you, but
yeah. So Dagon was written in 1917.
1917. Okay, that makes sense.
But published in 1919.
Okay, all right. Cool, very cool.
And this is one of the first horror stories by Lovecraft.
Oh, okay.
And you're absolutely right. It's and Lovecraft does this often. The character is only I.
Yeah.
We can assume that this is a male character because he fought in World War I.
Yeah. And it's probably not Randolph Carter.
Yes, so absolutely right. Now, again, a little bit of a side here. A couple years ago, Roger Corman was at the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival.
Yes, he was.
And he said that if he had money, he wanted to do a version of Dagon where it was a pilot.
Yeah.
And do, Blue Max and, Red Baron were really big back then. He wanted to do like a World War I airplane movie, and then the English guy gets shot down, picked up by the German boat, and then tell the Dagon story. They didn't have the money.
Yeah.
That would have cost a lot of money to do and Corman is the man known for making movies on the cheap.
Oh yeah.
And he just said and things, they would use a set, and before they took it down, they'd use it for another movie or something, or borrow costumes.
Sure.
He just, the movie he wanted to make, they just couldn't afford it at the time.
Oh, that's really a shame. But I don't know. I can't tell who I prefer to butcher Lovecraft. If I prefer Stuart Gordon or Roger Corman to butcher Lovecraft. And I always
thought just the fighter pilot part would have been very interesting.
Oh yeah, no, have that be like the first, because you have to pad that out. Not a huge amount of stuff happens, and you can only film someone walking on a mucky mire for so long. But Roger Corman, you could pad that out a bit, and and then definitely have like the fighter pilot stuff and the U-boat stuff. Or the destroyer stuff or whatever you end up doing with your a U-boat wouldn't make sense, but depending on what sets you have available to you at the time, you may end up doing something like, it's a U-boat. But yeah, no, it's that would be a very cool thing to see. Roger Corman, Dagon, Roger Corman, Shadow over Innsmouth. I think we've seen Stuart Gordon's Shadow over Innsmouth. Or no, who did Dagon, the movie?
The Dagon, the movie?
Yeah.
Let me do a little bit of checking here for you. Go through my notes. Now, I do know off the top of my head.
Yeah.
It was a Spanish-American project.
Oh, okay.
And that's where you got that view. And the movie Dagon, I have a sort of a mixed relationship with the movie Dagon.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of blood and gore, but it's a beautiful movie.
Yeah. No, definitely. All right. Is it Joe Dante? Let's see. Nope, Stuart Gordon. Yeah.
And it's hard to believe, too, but that movie's been out for 2 decades. It was made in 2001.
Yeah, no, I just saw that. It's like 20 years old. I don't think I saw it until like 2005, 2006. Someone said, there's a film called Dagon. And I'm like, what? And then I got it on Netflix when Netflix used to mail stuff to you.
So, yeah, I was aware of it.
Yeah.
But I didn't see it until... it was on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Gotcha.
That's the first time I saw it.
Okay.
And even then, and like I said, I'm just not a big gore fan.
Sure.
But it's a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
It's coloring, it's light. the city. It's this creepy atmospheric. Probably much more beautiful actors and actresses than Lovecraft imagined.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But it's a beautiful movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it is. It's a nice movie. It's a nice movie. I think it's a little too nice for the story, personally. But I do like that kind of like, it's a beautiful place and beautiful people and a terrible, terrible secret. It makes the secret even more terrible. And if you don't know the story, you kind of don't know what to expect. Hold on one second. I got a cough. Like, not sick, but, I'm recovering from my 2 shots. My muscles hurt so bad. I've just been laying on a couch. I haven't even been able to play my new guitar. Anyway, where were we? What we were talking about?
So the movie is a beautiful movie.
Oh yeah. But
color, it's a beautiful use of color.
Yeah, no, definitely. I have to say it's probably one of the best looking Stuart Gordon films I've seen. And
story wise, though, it's much more Shadow over Innsmouth than Dagon.
Oh, definitely. And what I was going to say is, everyone who out there is familiar with Shadow over Innsmouth, it's ugly, dirty people in a, like, I don't know, sea town that's falling apart. And I imagine
run downtown.
Yeah. I imagine more like the village in Sweet Haven in the movie Popeye, filmed in Malta. Like rundown shacks that are in the ocean, above the ocean, suspended on piers, just rickety ramps and gangplanks and whatnot, and just kind of a mishmash of stuff sinking into the sea, and just kind of like, it's like the first floor of the building is still on land, but it's like it's got a little bit of water in it. You got buildings that are burnt out and missing doors and windows, and I don't know, maybe like if the town in Popeye, like, came into massive disarray due to due to a plague in
yeah, and it's definitely and part of that is, I think, the genius of Lovecraft, and you can't really talk about the deep ones in Dagon without getting into the Shadow of Innsmouth.
Sure, yeah.
Is that they have different priorities.
Yeah, they do.
And they have different priorities. So maintaining these little buildings, and they also have different tolerances.
Yeah.
Water doesn't bother them.
Nope.
Water is kind of nice. I mean, there's water running down your street or the floor of your house. Mm-hmm. That's not a bad thing. That's Lovecraft showing us the alienness of them.
And anyone who's listening to this right now and is like, wait a minute, what are they talking about? Deepones are aquatic human hybrids that generally live in coastal towns, according to Lovecraftian literature and RPGs. H.P. Lovecraft's story Shadow over Innsmouth and Dagon feature these creatures that are amphibian in nature, look kind of like frogfish with sharp teeth and claws, and they worship the largest of their species, Father Dagon and Mother Hydra. And that's just my crash course on Deepones, Dagon, and Hydra. And we're just chatting about them right now. So, yeah.
And I think that's important, too, even though they're almost seen as gods. And especially Dagon, it appears as a god. These are just large species.
Yeah.
They, in turn, worship Cthulhu, which is like the high priest of... I keep forgetting who he's the high priest of.
Azathoth.
So it's sort of a power chain there.
Sure, yeah. No, I imagine, like, Dagon is like not only... Dagon and Hydra are not only the largest and oldest, but maybe they have powers like Aquaman. They can like make an octopus do their bidding. Or like,
I think that they definitely have sort of the sea technology.
Sure,
and we definitely see in the influence in the most latest Aquaman movie. So in the beginning, at Arthur's father's house when he meets his mother,
sure,
there is a copy of a Lovecraft book underneath the snow globe.
Okay.
So the director said, who is Asian, is saying, I'm taking some of these Lovecraft, the parts that I loved is Lovecraft, the good parts I thought, and putting it into the story. And we see a classic example is when towards the end of the movie, we see, when Aquaman and Mara are on that trawler, and the lightning flashes, and when you see the lightning, these sea creatures are just climbing all over it. That is scary. That is classic Lovecraftian level horror.
Yeah, definitely. Deep ones are scary. Not in the way that like Lovecraft, kind of like wrote them as like a symbol of race mixing, but they're scary because there's so many of them underwater. There's so many, like, one day they'll rise up and like eat us all, and that's pretty scary. Like, we don't know how many deep ones, like, in the world of Lovecraft, in the world of, Lovecraftiana, and in the Cthulhu mythos, we don't know how many damn deep ones there are. There's probably billions underneath the waves.
And, a different Arthur and a scientist, Arthur C. Clarke, who I love, and he's gone, I cannot believe in the Loch Ness Monster. Yeah. He says, lake monsters, river monsters, this small body of water. Sure. That there is these monsters in it. Yeah. I just can't get behind that. But he said, you want to tell me that there's anything still living out in the ocean? Well, that's a possibility.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Definitely.
So there's also a theory. And this is us rumor mongering, or me rumor mongering.
You bet.
But that one of the reasons Lovecraft wrote this was that he hated or was allergic to fish.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. As someone who doesn't like seafood and is allergic to some seafood.
Yeah, so I think that's just interesting how Lovecraft, in not always a good ways, but he always put part of himself in his stories.
Sure, definitely. Yeah. I have to say, I am a big fan of the whole concept of deep ones, because the fact that I don't like the ocean, and I don't like seafood, and I don't like I'm not a big fan of water. I mean, I love taking showers, and I like warm, hot water. That's what I like, but cold, briny, deep the ocean does not appeal to me. Although I love boats. I love being on boats. But no. It's like deep ones, Hydra. I was never afraid to go into the water or anything like that, but like thinking about like what's out there in deep waters, like, used to scare me as a kid.
So two true stories.
Sure.
And so out of the blue one day, I was like 6 years old. My dad was going to take me to the beach. We lived in a coastal town, but we didn't go to the beach. And so he bought me like one of those styrofoam. To me, it was huge, but I was only 6 years old. Little styrofoam floating things, so like cheap boogie board. And I slipped off, and I started rolling in the waves. And I'm 6 or 7, and so I have this vision the sea creatures are going to come and take me, and they're going to take me to their underground volcano while I'm rolling in the waves, remember. And to me, these sea creatures, I'm 6 years old, they were sea monkeys.
Okay.
The sea monkey ads.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, I hit up something this hard as I'm being drifted out to the sea. And it's my dad. He'd been right there, like within inches of me, and he just moved in front of me, so I rolled into him, so I didn't roll out. But I remember to this day, I had this vision that I was going to go to. This was way before I knew anything about Lovecraft. That the sea people, which looked like sea monkeys to me, were going to take me to their underground volcano base where I would breathe.
Ooh, maybe you were hearing the call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, the other, and this was again probably before I was Lovecraft, because I was probably 11 or 12. My dad, my uncle, my cousin and I were out fishing, and there was something on the surface.
Yeah.
And it was grayish white, and it was this big flab, and so we cut the engine and tried to drift up to it. And it dived. And I remember thinking that, it's some sort of creature from the Black Lagoon type creature.
Yeah.
And now I'm sure my dad and my uncle were sure at the time. It was probably a sunfish.
Okay.
Because I don't know if you've ever seen sunfish. They're very flat.
Yeah.
But they literally lay on their side, and that's where they get their name, come up to the surface, and the warmth of the sun. But you couldn't really see it. All you could see was this sort of gray flesh out in the water. And I always thought, as a kid, I knew it wasn't, but I was like, what if it's like this big sea guy that's just like getting some sun and then he's all mad because the boat comes by?
Yeah, let's talk about the creature from the Black Lagoon for a moment. That's pretty much closest thing we have had to a Deep One representation in media for ever.
and here is the thing.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people that are considered a little bit more academic in their studies and scholarly than you and I.
Sure.
Then, best of my knowledge, no one has been able to find a connection whether or not the producers and the directors and the writers were aware of Lovecraft.
Oh, yeah.
I suspect that they might, but if they were, they never admitted it, as far as I know.
Yeah, no, but I mean, the idea of a sea monster person, creature, okay, we need a new monster. It's a man in a suit that has claws, and he comes out of the water. Yeah, let's give him gills and claws. And let's make them pop. So paint them green, even though it's black and white.
And it wasn't. This wasn't just an idea that Lovecraft created.
Sure. Yeah. No.
The Japanese had shark men. So there definitely were inspirations, but yeah, I would say that the creature of Black Lagoon is a really good representation of a Deep One, even though they may not have known what Deep Ones were when they were creating it.
Yeah. Crazy stuff. All right. After the break, Dave's going to talk about some Dave stuff, and then we will talk about using Deep Ones, Dagon, and Hydra in your D&D campaign, Call of Cthulhu, etc. All right, we'll see you after the break, everyone. And remember, we this month are sponsored by Blueberry and Akai, I don't know how to say that, flavored Rockstar limited edition, Copper Cow coffee, pour over Vietnamese coffee, one of my personal favorites, and Glary electric guitars. Check out the electric guitars that Glary has right now. They've got some new cool ones coming in, and for under $200 you can get one of those fancy schmancy guitars that have F-holes cut in them, semi-hollow. They look really nice, and I got one, but I've been too weak to play it since I got my shots the other day. Which
they have effing holes cut in them?
No, they've got F-holes like a violin. So, yeah, no.
Violins have effing holes cut in them?
They totally do, Dave. They totally do.
Send your David knows nothing about music hate mail to
pgttcm.com/contact. All right.
Dave's corner of the podcast. Dave's.
Hello, my listeners. I hope you are doing well, as I am. So this is the part usually where I, sometimes DB, interview someone. We're going to do it a little bit differently today because I wanted to share some things with you. Not because I messed up and didn't schedule an interview. No, that would never happen too often. No, today I want to talk to you a little bit about the evolution of the show and why the farm. So the answer to that question is yes, a good proportion of the show is actually recorded on a working farm. Why? Because I live on a working farm and it's just easier to record here than drive into Portland and work with DB, or I've done actually some recording, some interviews in my cars just because of timing or because I didn't want the occasional farm sound. So we get that coming in, and it's usually farm noises are coming to the show, as our regular audience know, usually one of two forms. The most common is Ralph the Rooster. The roosters like to come right up to my window any time of the day and just belt out this huge cock-a-doodle-doo. And it's several roosters that do it, but we all generically tag them under Ralph. And I was on the Innsmouth Book Club. The whole idea between that podcast is that you actually travel to Innsmouth and, you tour, you talk about things Lovecraftian, and the rooster just went off right there. So I had to explain that I had Ralph, my emotional support rooster, and that I brought it to Innsmouth, Massachusetts with me. So, yes, and then when it comes to March, around that area in the next month or so, this is actual goat farm, and so we will be bringing newborn baby goats into the living room because it's so cold, sometimes even my room, and I do my day job too, also from home, and occasionally people talking on the phone are used to people working from home now with COVID, and sometimes people will hear the baby goats, but not know what they are. And I have people ask me, are you working from home? Do you have kids? Well, yes, I have kids, but not the kind you think of. And we do, work around, especially if maybe we're interviewing someone who's not really comfortable with farm sounds. They can always say, hey, we want to cut those out, but almost no one does. I mean, that's part of the charm of this show, I think, is that, part of it is recorded and produced on a working farm. And ironically, I just stopped recording for a little bit, wanted to backtrack some, and Ralph just let off a cock-a-doodle-doo there, so we just missed it. But it does happen occasionally. Very rarely, if we're doing a storyline or something, we will add goat sounds or rooster sounds if it's needed for the storyline that we're doing. Very rarely. Most of these are actual goats and roosters here. Now, those long-term listeners know that the People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos has been around, I don't think a decade, but at least like 6, 7, 8 years. I got involved with it maybe about 2 or 3 years. when its companion podcast, Black Clock Audio. And I would often appear as a guest, doing a portion of the show, talking usually something Mythos related, maybe Ambrose Bierce, but usually Mythos related stuff. DB and I have met and have known each other from the Road City Comic Con, as well as things like the H.P. Lovecraft film festivals. So we definitely traveled in the same circles, at least when the cons and the conventions came through. I knew many of the same people, so I became a frequent guest on the People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Second only, I think, probably to Ken Hite for a period of time. Then, DBA basically offered me my own show. And it took me about 5 minutes to come up with the sort of working concept. And that was called Dave's Underground Goat Shenanigan. And then again, I go back to just sort of clear something up. And Ralph Crow, there's a Ralph. But yeah, he's kind of talkative, but only apparently when I usually got the recording turned down. So back to the story. So I came up with the idea of there's a loud, good, strong Ralph for you. Real rooster. You're listening live. So I came up with the idea of this persona of Farmer Dave. It was kind of, okay, we know you're real, Ralph. you can back down a little bit. That Farmer Dave was this goat farmer who discovered that he had a underground Illuminati base and museum under his farm that he had inherited, and loud roosters. And went through there, and some of the stories were like sort of these relics, kind of based on GURPS Warehouse 23. Some of them were, find the entire USS Eldritch in what he thought was a swimming pool underneath his farm. And that was fun, but that was a lot of work for one single person, and I would do what I could. And so sometimes there'd be 3 or 4 episodes a month, and sometimes there'd be 1. And from this, I kind of grew out Oleander, Oregon. Now, Oleander was kind of always had this idea in my head of what the town Estacada, Oregon I live in, what it would be like if it was really sort of high weirdness. And I would mention Oleander a little bit in Dave's Underground Goat Shenanigan. But DB, who keeps a really good idea, he's got an idea of what is being listened to, what's not being listened to, what the audience is listening to, especially with COVID. And he said, okay, we're going to just combine everything and we're going to make it into one show. And we thought about maybe Welcome to Oleander, but that just seemed too much, or Morning Oleander, and that just sounded too much like a Welcome to Night Vale to us. So we went with Radio Free Oleander, and where we would basically do characters of ourselves, and we would be broadcasting podcast radio show. And we would hype up on basically the weird people in the town and the weird things were going. And we did that for about a year. And then, people started coming back. People started requesting more Mythos stuff. So we went back to, the People's Guide to Cthulhu Mythos. So there's a lot of things that sort of blend in. In fact, we still do reports about what's going on in Oleander, but we've got basically one show, The People's Guide to Cthulhu Mythos, and that's a combination of a bunch of different shows. Dave's Underground, Goat Shenanigans, Welcome to Oleander, or Radio Free Oleander, excuse me, D&D on D&D, Black Clock Radio, and of course, the original People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Now, the show is usually broken into 3 parts. And recently, what we have been doing, recently being, I believe, about the last 4 months, or the last 12 to 16 episodes, is we're just basically going through alphabetical order the creatures, tropes, characters, and sometimes writers of the Cthulhu mythos. And we're up to D now, Dagon, Hydra, and the Deepones. And we usually break the show up into 3 parts. So the first part, we talk a little bit about what's going on in Oleander, and a lot of that's just sort of riffing. Sometimes we have ideas, but a lot of that's improv, and a lot of it is sort of exaggerated versions of what's happening in our real life, like the time I turned and accidentally ended up leading a local town parade because I made a wrong turn coming out of the supermarket, or this strange guy who was knocking on DB's door on New Year's Eve. But a lot of it's sort of exaggerated, what's going on, And then we usually talk, sometimes we call this Dave's Corner of Dave's Corner of the podcast if I'm sort of hogging the conversation. Then that's about one of the subjects. Part 2 is usually, in what you're listening to or not listening to in this case, is an interview, usually with a writer or maybe an academic or someone who is in some way involved in horror, science fiction, Lovecraftian or not, often game designers. Then we have the third part, which is again usually a Lovecraftian top and or trope, but it's more on how it could be used in pen and paper role-playing games, since Daniel and I are both really enthusiastic RPGers. Now, let's say that you are interested in the Cthulhu mythos, but really not role-playing games. That's okay, because we often discuss the topics. We discuss more than just how they fit into a role-playing campaign. So even though some of what we talk about will be of little interest to you, I think if what we do present about the topic itself, either the trope or the creature or maybe the dark demonic book, I think you'll find interesting. Now, are we going to change again? Of course we're going to change again. Change is that one constant that is even in the dark empathy of Lovecraftian universe. Change happens. But I don't know what the change is yet. I don't think that DB does. But what he does is he's very in tune to the demographics, what people will listen to, what they listen to the most, and also feedback. And so there may be changes in the show as we progress. He always, sort of keeps one step ahead of the trends. And so we will sort of change to meet what the trends are, what the desires of the listening audience. Now, what does become very effective here is that input. So if there's something you want, more Oleander, less roosters, whatever it is, more comedy or less comedy, then by all means, reach out to us, because especially in this part where we're growing and things are sort of picking up, we're sort of getting more sponsors. This is a time where, bluntly, we're influenced by peer pressure. So this is a great time to either send us an email or send us a message on Facebook of what you would like to see more, who you'd like to see us interview, and there's a good chance that we'll do it. So that's sort of the basic history of who we are and how we got here. And I'm just hoping that we'll be able to keep this up, and just how much we are grateful for people who listen, support, and reach out to us. So with that, I'm hoping that you are staying well.
Thank you once again for listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. You can help show your support by going to the show notes and following any of the links that'll tell you how to support the show and how to support our guests. And thank you to all of our guests who you can find in the show notes. Rate, review, subscribe, and remember, patrons get priority access to asking us questions, suggesting topics, even, I don't know, submitting stuff. Actually, you don't have to be a patron to submit anything. That's how Dave got on the show, and that's how you can get on the show too. It's the People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends. Thank you for listening. Back to the show. And that break has broken. Dave, how are you doing?
I am doing well.
Oh, it's good. Hey, we are back from the break, Dave, and yeah, we're talking about Deepones, Dagon, and Hydra, Esoteric Order of Dagon.
So in D&D and in most games, your work is cut out.
Oh yeah, totally.
There is a Deep One influence race, and even this where we do. I think Gary Gygax and the original writers loved Lovecraft.
Oh yeah,
and they were very open that the and I always mispronounce this, the Shagawan.
Yeah, the Shagawan, that's what I call them.
Are based on the Deep Ones.
Yeah, I feel like there's a couple that could be based off the Deep Ones, but the Shagawan, I always felt were like very Lovecraftian in nature.
In fact, and again, this is probably about 15 years ago, back when they still had paper print Dragon magazines.
Oh yeah.
They had an article called the Shadow over, I want to say, Greyhawk.
Okay.
It was one of them. And they said that definitely Gygax said that the Shagawan were based on the Deep Ones.
Oh yeah. So that wouldn't be too hard then to make a Dagon and Hydra, who are just like much higher level clerics of Azathoth. So yeah, and I'm pretty sure,
or warlocks.
Yeah, or warlocks, definitely.
You know what is even easier?
What's that?
The new Modifius Conan game, because they blunt out say that they are Deep Ones.
Oh, cool.
And because there's always this sort of Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard connection.
Uh-huh.
But one of the free adventures you can get is about, I'm probably spoiling this, but it's a shipwreck adventure.
Oh, cool.
Where fishy guys come up, but they straight out call them Deep Ones in that, as well as, of course, the Call of Cthulhu.
Okay. All right. Cool. Oh, yeah. Call of Cthulhu definitely has Deepones, Dagon, and Hydra all statted out for you. I'm sure somewhere out there D&D has Dagon and Hydra statted out for you that isn't in Deities and Demigods First Edition.
Yeah, I think it is our good friend, whose name I forgot, but you will recognize the name as soon as I say it. Oh, Sandy Peterson.
Oh, yeah.
I believe Sandy Peterson has a 5th edition out, as well as you can find them online.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. And, so, Dave, how would you use Deepones, Dagon, and Hydra in your D&D campaign?
Well, here's one that I like that can be sort of system agnostic. But have you seen the movie Underwater?
No.
So the director has definitely said, and again, spoilers, that the creatures in underwater, although they don't use the worm, are deep ones, and the big bad that shows up at the end is Cthulhu.
Ooh, okay.
So, and I get it, it's a mixed bag. Underwater really sort of throws you right into the middle of the story. For those that aren't familiar, it starts out as sort of this underwater survival story.
Okay.
Where this huge underwater mining complex starts cracking up and water starts flooding everybody out, and the survivors have to get out.
Okay.
So this could be this great template for a Call of Cthulhu game, a GURPS Transhuman Under Pressure, which is their underwater game, cyberpunk.
Yeah.
And then so they have to get from one end of this underwater construction or underwater mining, whatever it is, to the other end to get to the escape pods.
Ooh.
So they got to go all this survival. And then about halfway, they start finding this life form that tries to grab them and kill them. So it comes from just basic underwater survival to underwater horror survival.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, and I think this is I think the way that they introduce the Cthulhu character, and Cthulhu is never used in the movie, but the director and writer said, yeah, no, this is Cthulhu. The way that they sort of introduce how they first see it is just great impact. And like I said, I get it's a hit and miss movie, and a lot of people don't like it. But I think that's a great sort of high-tech or modern high-ish tech way to use sea creatures. And there's a lot of underwater based games like Polaris, GURPS Transhuman Space, Under Pressure. The first third of the fourth corporate war in Cyberpunk 2020 is 2 ocean tech companies.
Okay.
So it can become this sort of horror, but it doesn't have to be traditional horror. It could be that these deep ones are created biotech by the other corporations of the other nations.
Neato, yeah, I like that.
So I love this sort of, and underwater is like being in outer space. Humans aren't designed to live there.
Sure, yeah.
So all of a sudden, you're in the deep one's territory, especially this high tech. We think we've got this safe thing set up. It could be like a GURP steampunk Atlantis or whatever. We've got this big underwater complex. Well, it just takes a few cracks and everything goes to heck.
Yeah. Okay. Huh. I like that. I like that a lot. What I was thinking is going in the opposite direction of, instead of the future, doing the past. And I was thinking something about, like, I don't know, Meiji Restoration, Japan, and just having, like, deep ones being kind of like, I hope this doesn't sound too dumb, but like coastal farmers and stuff like that who are trying to take over the whole archipelago. Maybe they have a church. They have a cult, the cult of Dagon. Maybe everyone just thinks it's like some sort of like death cult or something, but it's like they're just trying to take over the whole island, and then after they take over the whole island, maybe move to mainland Asia, kind of thing.
Have you ever read a Roger Zelazny short story called 24 Views of Mount Fuji?
No.
So in this, it's an American agent in Japan, and she basically is battling the monks of Dagon.
Oh, okay.
And so they are monks, Japanese monks, and she's got to go to like the 24 places that Mount Fuji was painted to find evidence. But of the story, the part that I remember the most is, so they had the monks of Dagon, which were these like deformed monks with their own like martial arts, with webbed fingers, and so I mean, it makes. And if you're doing like a D&D game, you could do Lizard Man or Shigawa monks as the enemy.
Yeah, I was thinking Kappa, the turtle people with a little bowl of water in their head.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like thinking like maybe that, like what if Deepones bred with Kappas and, not necessarily monks, but like just kind of hid out as like rice farmers and at night just kind of like attacked places, and you're hired by some cowardly warlord who's like, ooh, you've got to protect us. Maybe get a little I don't know, Sanjiro on this whole thing, and have like two warlords who are like fighting over stuff, and then you've got this cult that's trying to like gain influence over people in both and get them to join up to rise up against both of the warlords,
which was a real thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Cult politics in medieval Japan were absolutely a real thing.
Oh yeah.
We say cult, but I mean they were regional religions trying to influence a national country. Absolutely a real thing during medieval Japan.
Yeah. But I don't know. I was thinking Meiji Restoration just because it's the one that I know the most about.
and if you're using GURPS Japan, they do have the shark bin.
Oh yeah,
they do have the stats for it.
Yeah, and you could definitely do it for D&D. Just do like fantasy Asia. D&D really likes to do that. It's not nearly as bad as it used to be, though. I think they do more research than martial arts films these days, so that's nice. Yeah.
And even and absolutely, I love the idea of putting in an Asian setting, but even a medieval setting, because the Merovingian line to the French throne claimed to have come from the sea.
Sure, yeah. And I don't know, there's something I like about like late 19th century American soldiers like having to like deal with like Deepones in the Philippines trying to build a base or something like that.
No, absolutely. And
I mean, that might be an interesting like Delta Green.
Absolutely. Or there's a lot of Lovecraft doesn't really say who it was that invaded Innsmouth.
Oh, I thought he said that it was the Navy.
Well, no. So the Navy. I think they said some Coast Guard. But he says some military and then some Federals.
Okay, yeah.
And so the Federals are probably not. They're kind of as the FBI, but to be honest, it's kind of early for the FBI.
Yeah.
So a lot of sort of out of Delta Green, the kind of idea is that the Navy that they had Marines.
Yeah.
And the Marines, in one of some of the Delta Green short stories, they're pulled off of, I think, an actual Marine action in Nicaragua.
Okay.
So what if, you did a Marine campaign in Call of Cthulhu that you, invaded Innsmouth, and then you're sent back to Nicaragua, and the Deep Ones want revenge.
Ooh.
They can smell the blood of their relatives on you.
Yeah, I like that. Oh, goodness. Deep Ones, you can use them all over the place. Anywhere that there's water, you can throw out Deep Ones. One thing I've thought of, like, growing up in Portland is it's like, oh man, there's like not any good places where Deep Ones could hide, and that I'm like, well, we do have a lot of bridges that people live under here, or used to, and then they welded everything shut and put rocks under everything, big boulders. One
of the scariest scenes was, of all people, Derelith.
Yeah.
Is he has the Deep Ones traveling the rivers. So I've seen them as, like salmon, fresh and salt water.
Oh.
So there could be, they could, the Deep Ones want to hit something in Portland, they just go up to Columbia and take a left at the Willamette.
Yeah. No, yikes.
So I got another idea. We're probably close to wrapping it up.
Okay.
But we think of Star Wars. One of the main characters in all the games.
Yeah.
Is the Mon Calamari. And we think of them, kind of as Admiral Akbar, the good guys.
Yeah.
But what if there was a cult of Dagon, a bunch of evil Mon Calamari?
Ooh.
That are, selfish, and not only are we going to kill the Quarrons, we're going to kill all the humans too.
Yeah.
So you could use it easily in a Star Wars or any science fiction type game.
Ooh. And I have one final one. I was thinking, what if during any major conflicts in the Southeast, like anything from like the Battle of War of 1812 to the Civil War, like anything like Deep Ones being like, oh hey, these people are fighting. What if we just like try and start taking over now? And because that's kind of like what happened in Innsmouth at one point in time. Is there was just kind of like enough people not paying attention that stuff happened, and let's say you have I think it was the Battle of New Orleans happened because the fact that people didn't get word in time or something like that.
The surrender treaty had signed before the battle took place, and they weren't aware of it.
Yeah, what if they were aware of it, and what actually happened was Deep Ones?
That's an excellent idea.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, no, you could have the British and the Americans fighting together at the Battle of New Orleans with French and German troops as well that would have been there fighting against Deep Ones. And maybe there's like a French soldier who's like, oh, Sacre Bleu, I know all about this stuff. My grandmother used to tell me. She's Greek and she grew up here, and they used to have these things and they used to get rid of them by doing this. And then, saves the day. Because, it's not like you're going to have a chance to go do library checks or anything like that if you're doing a Call of Cthulhu game. But anyway, Battle of New Orleans, Deep Ones. That's my idea.
I think that's a great idea.
Me too. All right. Well, hey, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Next week, I'm not sure what we're having. We were slated to do Delta Green, but I'm like, hey, we've had Scott Glancy on so much. Do we really need to do Delta Green? So we are going to be talking about Daoloth and the Dark Young of Shub-Niggurath. And after that, we will be talking about Dimensional Shamblers and the Dreamlands. After that, it'll be Dunwich and Ibon. And then after that, it'll be Season 15. And we will see you in Season 15 after that. But hey, we'll see you next week for episode 29, season 14. All right, everyone. Thank you again so much for listening to the show. Rate, review, subscribe. PGTTCM.com is where we have links to all or most of our show sponsors and a link to Dave's website, which I don't know if he's even updating these days, but
No, but it's got a lot of good stuff.
It has
I've read it.
It has a ton of good stuff.
So be there or be a non-Euclidean shape.
Yeah. Anything else you have to say before we head off into this glorious night, Dave?
Thank you for listening, and bye.
Bye. All right.
So I happen